Shalom Aleichem. How are you doing? I didn't see you coming in. What pleasure to see you. This is a very, very interesting halachic topic, and I wrote what are my responsibilities, halachic responsibilities, towards Jews who are not yet observant. And there are three questions that I want to think about, and then we're going to look at some responses. The first question is, can I give someone food if I know that when I give them the food, they're not going to make a bracha on that food? Question number one. Question number two, really, what are the boundaries of the command in Parashat Kedoshim, Lifnei Iver lo titeni michshol, that you can't put a stumbling block in front of the blind? Meaning, how should that affect my, my relationship with other Jews? Does that mean that there are certain things I shouldn't offer them to do? Can I offer them to stay with me for Shabbat, knowing that they're going to drive to visit me? Is that going to be a problem of putting a stumbling block in front of the bank because I'm forcing them really to drive to visit me? So that's the halachic question. And the third question is there a difference between a Jew who doesn't keep halakha because he hasn't had the honor of studying at Machon Meir, he hasn't learned the halakha, as opposed to somebody who knows the halakha and has chosen not to keep the halakha? Would we treat those two people differently in this issue?
The Mishnah is that someone who's a chaver can't give fruits or vegetables to a non-chaver because we're demai or tevel, because that he's not going to be able to guide them.
The truth is, in the Mishnah, the definition of a chaver is somebody that I know that they took trumot or maasrot.
Right.
Quite right. So exactly, can I as a chaver accept from a non-chaver knowing that they have not taken off trumot or maasrot? It's also give to them as well.
That's also a problem too.
Right, because I know, will I give them tevel, knowing that they're not going to take trumot or maasrot? Right. Yeah. These are excellent questions. It's also when there's a clash between my responsibility of bein adam lamakom and my responsibility bein adam lechaviro. How do I juggle that? What are my responsibilities? So what we're going to do is we're going to look together. We're going to do really three things. The first thing is understanding the idea of lifnei iver lo titenu michshol. Don't put a stumbling block in front of the blind, but not discussing it in a halachic, but more in what's my responsibility. What's that phrase mean? That's the first thing we're going to do. Then after we look at that, we're going to look at really two applications. The first one is giving someone food when I know that they're not going to make a bracha on it. That's actually, the Gemara discusses it. We're going to look at the Gemara and the Shulchan Aruch on that issue. And then after we look at the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch on the issue of giving food to somebody who won't make bracha, we're going to look at contemporary poskim grappling with that question. It's a fantastic sort of blend of where halakha grapples with like human relationships and guides us in a really beautiful way, because this is a perfect example where we really need halakha to show us the right thing to do, because my mind says one thing, my heart tells me something else, and that's why we need the halakha to help us navigate those complicated situations. So we're going to start. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the psukim. Shalom Uvracha, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Excellent. So much better now that you came in.
I'm so sorry, I just need to go.
What an excellent thing to do. Wonderful. Enjoy learning Gemara Brachot. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you, sir.
It's a very important thing to learn.
My son's upstairs, so I need to...
Okay. So over here, so we're going to start with the pasuk. The pasuk in Vayikra Perek Yutet tells us, "Lo tekalel cheresh." You shouldn't, speak badly to somebody who can't hear you. Shouldn't curse someone who's right, a deaf person. V'lifnei iver, and if there's someone who can't see, lo titeni michshol. Don't put a stumbling block in front of them. Someone can't see, and then you put something in front of them they can trip over. That's really not the way to do things. V'yareitem elokecha ani Hashem. Have fear of heaven, I am God. Because of course the blind guy doesn't know that you put it there. You follow? And therefore Hashem says, I know, and therefore be sure not to do that. So I understand that in a very simple sense, talking about a blind person. And that's in fact what the Sforno says. Lifnei ver lo titein michshol, she'af al pi shelo tazik biyadayim, hine tigrom anezek. I'm not tripping him over, but by putting this block in front of someone who can't see, I'm effectively causing him to fall. I'm not pushing him, but I'm basically pushing him. You follow? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, Lifnei ver lo titein michshol. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirush wrote a beautiful, very important commentary on the Torah. It may well be here.
Somewhere in the.
Yeah, I think
You saw it somewhere.
I'm sure it's either there or certainly should be there.
Wow.
Oh wow! Shalom Aleichem Asher. What a joy to see you.
It's so unhealthy, but it looks tasty.
I got it from the hefty.
Okay.
We have the 5 megillot from here.
Excellent.
No, I have to resist.
Do you need that?
So no, it's on the source sheet, but it's a
Bravo,
fantastic. But no, thank you. But thank you. You should enjoy learning them there.
Is there anything else?
You'll enjoy it.
Well, David and I have been learning the 19 letters by here.
Oh, oh, excellent. Are you learning it in German?
We have
interesting
finished it, yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh, that is such a brilliant chavruta. Excellent. So I'm afraid to say this has been, I'm going to, reading a Hebrew translation of the German. We have to be cautious in the way we behave, and the way we speak. Dibureinu. Leval yisaknu et shalom re'enu mibechina chomrit or musarit. That we shouldn't compromise someone else's peace of mind, either physically or ethically. לא רק סומה מבחינה גופנית קרוי עיוור, אלא כל מי שנתעוור מבחינה רוחנית או מוסרית. כל מי שנסתעוור מחמת עבר, אף הוא בכלל עיוור. So he says that the idea of somebody who is blind, he defines blind in a very, very wide sense. If you're in a country, if you're in Germany and you don't speak German, so then you are handicapped. You can't communicate. I am dependent on people, for help. Well, I need to give them accurate advice. I am if I don't speak the language, I'm bivachinat. I'm like a blind person because I'm lost in that situation. Likewise, this perfect timing, Asher. If somebody is on a diet, like they're on a diet, and then you bring in food, and I know that they can't control themselves. That is also a din of lifnei ver lo titein michshol. Not putting a stumbling block in front. If you put temptation in front of somebody who you know cannot withhold that temptation, that is also an extension of lifnei ver lo titein michshol. Lefichach, therefore, lo rak hasham even b'darko. It's not just about putting a stone in front of the path of someone who's walking and cannot see. Ella kol hamasi eitzah she'ena hogenet. Somebody who gives advice that isn't accurate. Hamoshit dvarim she'efshar l'shtamish bahem ba'avera kagon moshit kos yain lenazir. Or you tempt somebody. You give a glass of wine to somebody who's decided they're not going to drink. That's also lifnei iver lo titein michshol. You're still taking advantage of another person. All of these are examples of taking advantage of somebody else, and that would all fall under the rubric of lifnei ver lo titein michshol. Likewise, selling weapons to somebody who could use it to do something terrible. If you sell someone clothing that has shatnez on it, somebody, you are supporting somebody who is, may may fail, may do an avera. Now look at this one. This is a really, really beautiful example. If you cause somebody to lose their temper, everybody in English, there's like buttons. Everyone's got a button, and when you press that button, you lose it. You know what I mean? Everyone can, somebody who knows you can niggle you in a way that can cause you to really lose your temper. If I were to do that to somebody else and cause them to lose it, that would also be bivchinat lifnei ver lo titein michshol, putting a stumbling block in front of the bride, because I'm causing somebody else to fall. Their falling is a result of my action. Any situation in which they fall, a result of my actions, that is lifnei ver lo titein michshol. So we see from Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch that he's taken the concept of putting a stumbling block in front of the bride and really expanded it to really any situation where I'm taking advantage of somebody else, causing someone to lose their anger, causing someone to cave into temptation, causing somebody to wear something shatnez when I know that that's what they're going to do, offering non-kosher food to somebody. All of this stuff would be a problem of lifnei ver lo titein michshol. These are the words of Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. Joy? That's the first section. Now, if we go now from there to something practical, I'm going to read the Gemara, and then we're going to look at how we should understand it. This is a statement from the Amoraim. It's in section number 2. Do you see that? Can I give someone food if I know that they will not make a bracha? Toshima, come and hear. Da'omer Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera taught in the name of Rav. Rav was one of the early Amoraim. Lo yitain adam prusa letoch piv shel shamash. You shouldn't give some bread to your, somebody who is serving food in your home. Ele im kain, unless you know shenatal yadav, that he washed his hands. In other words, if I'm serving a meal, somebody's serving a meal in my home, and the waiter who is Jewish is serving the meal, I can't offer him bread unless I know that he washes hands for hamotzi. But if I'm going to offer him bread and he's not going to wash his hands to say hamotzi, then I should not offer him the food. Those are the words of the Gemara. Does that make sense? The words of Rabbi Zera.
It's only regarding lechem, or is
No,
it both kind of food?
this is. This is an extension. This is an example.
She could do not wash his hands and say, "Okay, what's lechem we know?" It'd also be.
That's not a.
The truth is, no, you're right, but you're right. The truth is that we will see later on one of the people using this Gemara as a source for a halachic ruling. It's interesting the example the Gemara uses, because let's say I give you water to take a drink. So the moment that I hand you the water, I don't know if you're going to make a blessing on it or not, right? But if I hand you the bread, if I would say, do you want to have bread? You need to have you need to wash your hands before I give you the bread. So for the fact that when he takes it and he's about to eat it, I know that because he hasn't washed his hands yet, I know that he's not going to do things as I would like him to do. If I were to give him an apple and he's about to bite the apple, I don't know, maybe the second before he bites the apple, he'll make borei priyait. Maybe he will. But if I give somebody bread and he immediately takes his hands and he's about to take a bite, even if he's about to say hamotzi lechem min haaretz, I know that he never, because of me, he never washed his hands for hamotzi. You follow? And therefore I've certainly put him into a situation where I've caused a person to eat bread without washing his hands first, and that would seem to be a problem of lifnei iver, based on what we saw in Rav Shimshon earlier. Yes.
I was thinking, is there not another issue of mitzvah derabim?
in the sense that when one, with bread and washing one's hands, at least in the time of the Mishnah, this was about like for Kohanim, right?
Correct,
Not
correct.
only Kohanim would wash their hands, but everybody wanted to have clean hands so that they wouldn't spread tumor around.
Right.
While they're eating. So, unlike a bracha, which only affects you, that's not a mitzvah d'rabim. The mitzvah d'rabim here is keeping everything tower for the Kohanim.
Ah, I see. Yeah, I see. That's very, very clever. Very clever distinction. But it's still, meaning, you're right, it's a mitzvah to rabbim, but it's on me as the yachid. Meaning, everybody does netilat yadayim in order that when the temple is rebuilt, we will remember that the kohanim wash their hands. That's why we do netilat yadayim. But me as an individual today, I'm washing my hands for motzi lechem min haaretz because Chazal established that that's what we need to do. So the reason, you're right, is may be a communal reason, but the obligation on me to wash my hands is something that applies to me as an individual.
Well, it became a minhag Yisrael, but at least in the time of the Tanaim, this was more than just a minhag Yisrael. It's like I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out the reason for the brighter.
It's not a brighter. It's after. It's from the time of Amoraim.
Oh, okay. Then yeah.
Then maybe that would answer your. Okay. So this is the. It seems it's quite harsh, quite a harsh statement here, in the Gemara, that if somebody won't wash, I shouldn't give him any bread. There are many interpretations of this piece of Gemara, but I want to learn.
Can I ask something?
Sure, of course.
Is this related to only Jew or it's
Yeah, only a Jew, of course. Yeah. Yeah, because he only on a Jew. Yeah, well, I can't bring anybody to transgress something that they are. So, I mean, lifnei iver lo titei michshol does not apply. It applies to the whole world. The idea of misleading another person or taking advantage of another person is something that could be true of everybody at all times. That's not the specific to Jews, but because the example that we're giving, that is washing before bread, that's something that is only relevant for Jews and not to non-Jews. So for the example that the Gemara gives is about Jews, but the principle is true across the board. So Rabbeinu Yonah is a commentary on the Rif. At the back of the Gemara, you have Rabbi Yisrael Al-Fassi, who took all the halachic bits of the Gemara and wrote a Sefer Halacha. One of the commentaries on the Rif is Rabbeinu Yonah, and the Rif quotes the Gemara, and Rabbeinu Yonah has a very, very clever, I think I would even say well known, because he's quoted extensively by recent poskim. Rabbeinu Yonah tries to understand why it is that I'm not allowed to give bread to this person, and try to figure out a situation in which I would be allowed to give him. Now look what he says. So he quotes a Gemara. Do you see that? Lo yitein adam, you shouldn't give bread to somebody. In this case, it's the shamash of the person, the person living in your home, waiting on you. Eleim kain, I would not give him food unless yodea bosh and natal yadov, unless I knew that he washed his hands. Yesh lemedim mikan, though there are people who learn from this ruling, she'ein ra'ui latet le'echol elel mish yodea bosh yivarech. I can only give food to a person if I know that person's going to make a bracha on that food. But if I know there's a Jew and I offer them an apple, they're not going to make bar piates on the apple, you can't give them the apple. However, v'nir'ah, it seems to me, says Rabbeinu Yonah, de kevan shemitkaven la'asot mitzvah shenoten b'torah tzedakah mutar. He says something very interesting. He says that if I'm giving to the person, not because they're a member of the household and we're just having supper, but I'm giving it to the person as a din of tzedakah, in a case where my giving him the bread is an act of tzedakah, and then I do not need to worry whether he'll make a bracha or not. Do you hear? You hear that? Now, why would that be the case? It's very, very clever. I'll tell you why. So this ruling of Rabbeinu Yonah makes it to the Shulchan Aruch. I'm just gonna read the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll look at the Taz who explains why it makes a difference if you're giving it to him b'torat tzedakah. I'm giving it to him as a gift for tzedakah rather than as two people sharing their lunch. So Beit Yosef disagrees. It says, "Ein tvarim nir'im ta'alitena shamash nami mitzvahu va'afilu hachi lo yitena elim ken yodeh b'shel notar yadav." So the Shulchan Aruch does not accept the words of Rabbeinu Yonah in the Beit Yosef. Do you follow what I'm saying here? You know that we've learned the Rif, then we learned Rabbeinu Yonah, and then Rabbeinu Yonah is quoted, but then rejected by the Beit Yosef. The Beit Yosef, as you know, was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, who subsequently wrote the Shulchan Aruch. However, even though in the Beit Yosef, his commentary on the Torah, even though in the Beit Yosef he rejects the words of Rabbeinu Yonah, he does include the words of the Beit Yonah of Rabbeinu Yonah in the Shulchan Aruch. So in the Shulchan
What is that?
Aruch, the Shulchan Aruch is divided into 4 parts.
Oh, that's one of
Is the laws of daily living. If you have a look right behind you, David, on the top shelf, there is 2 books: the taller books, the Shulchan Aruch, and the shorter books of the Torah. Do you see that? So let me just explain a minute. I should have explained it 5 minutes ago. I'm sorry. So the Torah is a Sefer Halacha, divided into 4 sections, and those 4 sections really incorporate all of modern Jewish law. So there's no laws of sacrifices in there. There's no laws of Shemitah in there, the laws that apply in the land of Israel, but all the laws that the Jewish people have been keeping for the last 2,000 years in exile are all in the Torah, the shorter book. The Torah was written by the son of the Rosh, who's one of the Halachic commentators at the back of the Gemara. Now, the Torah, this is all, I think, around 13th century. These were all written, maybe 14th century. 13th or 14th century, I'm hoping. And then, in the 15th century, Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote a commentary on the Torah.
Who wrote the Torah?
The Torah was written by the son of the Rosh. I think his name was Rabbi Yechiel, but I might have made that up. His father was Rabbeinu Asher and Balaturim. We're about, yes.
Regarding if I'm according to the halakha, I'm not supposed to give it to someone who's not going to make the bracha.
Right.
However, like in today's time, I know it's the right thing to do, but nevertheless, we are, as our Rosh Hashiva says, even the one who is not religious, they still have the neshama of Hashem.
Of course.
You have to always treat them as your brother. That's how they see the light in you, and they might change their ways. So if that is the case, if I keep ignoring that, if I say, no, this is the halakha, I'm not supposed to do it, at times, it's not really...
So that's exact. You describe so beautifully, Asher, the dilemma that we face. On the one hand, I'm offering food to somebody, and I know that he's not going to make a blessing on this food. So I know that me giving him the food is going to cause him to slip up.
Right.
On the other hand, if I don't give him the food, what sort of impression would he get of religious Jews?
Right.
Like exactly what you're saying. He's my brother. I care so much for him. I'll do anything for him. It's such an honor, that we have this great person as part of the Jewish people. But I'm grappling with this problem because I've got this chap, and tachlis, the bottom line is, if he doesn't make a blessing, it's because of me that he did not make a blessing, because I'm the one that facilitated that eating. So I'm just trying to figure out how to balance that. You follow? I can't extinguish my neshama, as you put so beautifully, and my care for everybody, but I have to find a halachic way to navigate this very, very sensitive situation.
So what would be a rough advice, like if you happen to be in a situation where you are with a non-religious person and you've got something to eat?
So we're going to look. That's exactly. We're going to. It is a halachic journey to get to the practical. The practical ruling of what to do today, and we're going to look at different rabbis grappling in different ways with exactly that question. But I just want to give a little bit of historical background to understand what we're doing. That we looked at the Bet Yosef. The Bet Yosef, for you to remind you, the Bet Yosef is a commentary on the Torah, which are the small books on the top shelf behind David. And in that book, the Bet Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo rejects the position of Rabbeinu Yonah, saying that you're allowed to give it to them midin staka. That's his commentary on an earlier halachic work. However, having written a commentary on the earlier halachic work, the Torah, he then wrote his own halachic work that followed the same index as the Torah. So if the topic of chapter 1 in the Torah is the laws of getting up in the morning, he wrote his book, and chapter 1 was also the laws of getting up in the morning. So it follows the same chapters and the same titles as the Torah, but he wrote what he believed to be the halacha, based on various things. And then in the Shulchan Aruch, which was it's not a commentary on a previous book, but his Shulchan Aruch that you can see on the right hand side, the taller books, on the right side, there he does quote Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay. So even though in his commentary on Torah he doesn't mention it, in the Shulchan Aruch he does, and this is the second source on the second page. He says, Lo yitein le'echol, you shouldn't give to eat, ella lemi sheyoter bar sheyavarech. I only give somebody if I know that they're going to eat. But then he adds, v'yesh mekilim, and there are those who are lenient, and that is Rabbeinu Yonah, obviously. Im notein lani b'torah tzedakah. I'm not sharing a meal with my friend, but rather I'm giving somebody that doesn't have, and I'm doing it midin tzedakah. If I do midin tzedakah, I'm not going out with a friend for lunch, and then paying for the meal, and then I wash and he doesn't wash, but rather it's somebody giving to somebody that doesn't have. And in that situation, I would be allowed to give it to him. Those are the words of the Shulchan Aruch. Why? What's the difference if it's tzedakah? The Taz explains. The Taz has got a very, very clever thing. The Turei Zahav is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. So we looked at the Bet Yosef, which is a commentary on the Torah, and now we're looking at the Taz, which is a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, and he says, it's very clever. If I give somebody to eat, give Reuven an apple, right? And I give it to him because he hasn't got an apple and he really needs an apple. So when I transfer this apple from my property, give it over to him, I have certainly fulfilled the mitzvah of tzedakah, right? Because I've had the opportunity to share an apple. Now he might make a bracha, maybe he won't make a bracha, I don't know. So my mitzvah was certain. I certainly did tzedakah. He perhaps will make a bracha, perhaps won't. That's a suffix. Right. You follow? So in the words of rabbinic Hebrew, my vadai, my certain mitzvah of tzedakah trumps his possible transgression of not making a bracha. Does that make sense? I'm a vadai because I fulfill the mitzvah, and he's a sofek because maybe he'll make a bracha, maybe he won't. So when you have a certain mitzvah against a possible transgression, the certain mitzvah wins. Those are the words of the Taz. Joy, happiness. Okay, with that I think we conclude the first section, which is like trying to figure out what the Gemara means.
Yeah,
Now,
in fact,
yes.
I was going to ask the same thing. Like, during the COVID time, there are a lot of food given out to the whole nation. People who are in need.
Sure.
And there are food items which are sent out. So I'm saying, if you're giving out, it's not for sure that people who receive those foods will make a bracha.
First you have to say bracha, then you get the
Yeah. Are you going to make the bracha?
Yeah, I don't think that would work so well nowadays. Anyway, okay, on this question, this is really, it's so beautifully, I think, Asher, I think you articulated it very well a few minutes ago about this. I have to find like a halachic route to navigate this very, very sensitive issue of, what can I do, what can I not do. I take halakha very seriously and I take him very seriously, trying to figure out what to do. So we're going to look at five different modern, all within the last 110 years. So until emancipation, there was no really, the idea of a non-religious Jew didn't really exist until after the French Revolution, emancipation, 1789.
There were concept of Amaretz and these kind of things.
That's true. No, but I mean, there wasn't somebody who identified as part of the Jewish community, but a non-observant member. Either you were a Jew, and then you were observant, or you weren't a Jew. But the idea of a secular Jew.
You didn't know better.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, Machon. Baruch atah Adonai, Machon Meir. But relatively recently, in Jewish history, the French Revolution,
Oh, yeah, okay.
when the Jews were into 1789, I think, when Jews started integrating into society, exactly, Enlightenment, Haskalah, when the walls of the ghetto started coming down and the Jews were becoming integrated. So then Jews could be Jewish, part of the Jewish community, and also part of general society, and sometimes, unfortunately, painfully, that led to this idea of having someone who proudly identifies as a Jew, but not necessarily with Torah mitzvot. So it's relatively recent that rabbis have been grappling with this question, because if I'm part of the community, I would obviously make the bracha. But to have a prominent member of the community, of the Jewish community, but I don't make brachot, that's relatively recent. You follow? So we're going to do this basically chronologically. We're going to start with the oldest, which are the Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch HaShulchan. Okay. So Mishnah Berurah says, Im yodeh b'vadai shelo yivarech. If I know for certain that this chap is not going to make a blessing, asur liteno, then you're not allowed to give him, even if you're giving it tzedakah. V'davke im mitoch rishato. V'davke im mitoch rishato. Aval im mitoch onso she'eno yachol levarech, lo nifka mitzvah tzedakah b'shvil zeh. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah says like this. Do you see what he says? There are two different types of people that don't make a blessing. There's one guy who knows the blessing, and he knows he needs to make a ha'etz. He knows that we need to wash for hamotzi now. But because he has decided to reject his Jewish heritage, he says, mitoch rishato. Somebody like that, we have less patience than for somebody that had no idea that there's a blessing, had no idea that we need to wash our hands. If I'm doing it, this lack of bracha is from a place of wickedness, it's an act of rebellion against the Jewish community, then there's less place for compromise, because you've chosen to distance yourself. But if my lack of bracha is based on ignorance, no one ever taught me, I never had the honor of coming to Machon Meir, then in that situation, you would, of course, give them the food and send them a link to a registration form. Yes, look in the comments. Okay, so that is the Mishnah Berurah. It makes a lot of sense. He distinguishes between different types of people not making brachot. The Aruch HaShulchan lived at the same time as a Mishnah Berurah, and he writes like this: Tzedakah have mitzvah v'tzarich liteno, ve'einu yachol la'akef hanetiniya mipnei hasafek shema lo yivarech, de'ein safek motzei midei vaday, like we saw in the Taz. He's saying, I have a commandment to do tzedakah, nachon? I don't know, maybe he'll make the blessing, maybe he won't. But my responsibility is to perform tzedakah. You follow? I like this. When I'm opposite you, when I'm opposite him, because he's not, it wouldn't be any of you. If I'm opposite him and I have an obligation to care for him, so my obligation right now is to take care of him. He may make a bracha, he may not, but that doesn't remove from me my duty to take care of somebody in need. You follow? I mean, I focus on my job. Okay. If you give it to him as a Torah matana, not a tzedakah, ein lo litenu ad sheyodeh sheyavarech, v'chein im yodeh b'vaday shemakabel lo yivarech, asur afilu ba'ani, v'chein yesh lehorot. Oh, so he rules quite strictly at the end. If I'm doing it b'Torah tzedakah, then I can focus on my duty. My duty is to provide for somebody that doesn't have. Maybe they'll make a blessing, maybe they won't make a blessing, but my focus is my duty. You follow? Now, if it's not a duty, this guy's doing fine. He doesn't need the food that I'm giving him. If it's not my duty, then I would need to know that he's going to make a blessing in order to be able to give it to him. You follow? So according to the Mishnah Berurah, the first source that we saw, he makes a distinction between people. The first category of Mishnah Berurah is people that are not making the blessing out from a place of spite, like a bitter place. We don't give them because you know the bracha, you've chosen not to say it. But there are other people that never signed up yet to Machon Meir. They don't know about the bracha. Then we would give them with the greatest joy. That's the distinction with the Mishnah Berurah. The Aruch HaShulchan makes a distinction between tzedakah. If it's tzedakah, charity, if it's my duty, then it is my duty to provide them with food. I'm not interested in what you do when it's my duty. You follow? I just need to worry about my duty to give you. But if it's not tzedakah, then it's not my duty. Then I would need to make sure that the person's going to make a bracha. Is that clear until now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
According to Orach Chaim Shimon, the one that we learned that if you're giving out, you're not actually giving your food, but you're just doing tzedakah. Say, for example, I'm on the dining table. We're about to have a lechem. So when I give him the bread, like we in the previous scenario, actually I'm not doing tzedakah. I'm giving a part of my food, right, on the table.
Yeah.
On the dining table at my house.
Right.
Somebody came, a very close friend, maybe a known person, acquaintance, it can be anyone, very close to me. And I for sure knew that he's not making bracha, he's not going to do that like that because he's not into that kind of, in that world yet. And if I give him food, like let's say a lechem, does that mean I'm giving tzedakah, or does it still consider as...
No, so if it's friends, that's harder to justify as tzedakah. Meaning somebody who's got a beautiful house with a lot of food at home, he doesn't need to come to me. We're having a meal because we're friends.
Right. Because I think that is the biggest challenge, I think, in regards to tzedakah.
So the truth is, on that, your timing could not have been better, as always, Asher.
Thank you.
The next three, all three, the Yalkut Yosef, the Sridehesh, and also Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, all three of them sort of look at the mitzvah of Lifnei Iver Lo Titein Michshol. It's a very, very interesting idea. They say, well, let me read it in the Yalkut Yosef, although we'll see similar in the others too. Lo Yitein Nechol, you shouldn't give. Yalkut Yosef is Rav Ovadia Yosef. Rav Ovadia Yosef, it was written by his son, the current chief rabbi, but is the teachings of Rav Ovadia Yosef. Lo Yitein Nechol, Ella Lemi Sheyodea Bo Sheyavarech. You only give if you know that the person is going to make a blessing. Ulam. Im ba leveito oreach nechbad. Look at this. This is amazing. Asher, it's mamash your... Let's say an honored guest comes into your home. She'eino shomer Torah mitzvot. They're not observant. Aval mokirit Torah v'lomdeh. But they certainly have a respect for Torah and those who learn it. Ve'im lo yichabdu be'eze kibud yigrom hadavar she'orech yisne et lomdei haTorah. Ve'im yidrosh mimenu levarech o lital yadav yivka v'yavod litei sinan shomer Torah mitzvot. Yesh lakel v'litei lefanav kibud ma'achal mashkeh. Al she'ino mevarech v'nachon hu l'atzmo yivarech b'kol ram v'yomar l'orech she'yishma hu motzi oto yidei chova. Okay, so he says like this. Rav Ovadia Yosef, it's very, very interesting. If I have a respected guest, let's say, I don't know, some important person comes round to my house, but that important person happens not to be a religious person. Now, but a Jewish person. So when they come to my home, it would be disrespectful not to offer them food. Right. Now, if I offer them food, they're not going to make a blessing, which I might have thought is lifnei iver lo titein mishol. I'm putting a stumbling block in front of the blind because I'm offering him food and he's not going to take the food, right? How can I avoid that? This is brilliant. So he says like this. Rav Ovadia says like this. I have two stumbling blocks. If I give him food, there's a problem. And if I don't give him food, there's also a problem. If I give him food, he's going to eat the food, but he won't make a blessing. But if I don't give him food, there's also a problem. Why? Because he's going to say, what a rude host. I'm a respectable person. I've come to meet him. We've been friends for 100 years, and he doesn't even give me any food. So it's not that I'm sort of in a catch-22 situation where whatever I do, I'm in a problem of lifnei iver. And he says, Rav Ovadia, that not giving him any food will cause him to despise religious people. You follow? And even though he may now at the moment be respectful towards religious people, because by not giving him the food, it will just give him a bitter taste of religious people, and it might turn him off from that connection that he has now to religion will be turned off. So I'm choosing the lesser evil. You follow? Neither option is good. If I give him the food, he won't make a bracha. If I don't give him the food, he'll think, oh, what a rude host coming to his house. He doesn't even bring any food out. So I'm choosing the lesser evil of giving him food. But, says Rav Ovadia, when I make the blessings, I should make the blessings out loud and tell him, I've got you in mind, and then he'll say Amen, let's say. You follow?
I was thinking the same thing.
So I'm going to invite people around, and we're going to offer as much food as we need to offer, and nobody needs to wash their hands for any food, but I don't want to turn people off. You follow? And therefore, I'm going to say the blessing out loud rather than asking them, obviously. I'm going to say a blessing out loud and just tell them I've got you all in mind. Yes?
There's in Masachet Brachot, if we have
such
someone,
a look at this guy, look at
if we
this.
have someone
Don't you love it?
that doesn't know Birkat HaMazon, and is say Birkat HaMazon out loud, even if he doesn't answer Amen,
Yes.
he's Yotze.
Yes. The truth is, I don't know if we ever learnt together the laws of davening. Do we ever do davening in English or davening in Hebrew or in whatever language we would be speaking? Do we ever do a shir on? But there, it's basically, the Gemara there talks about various tefillot that you can say in any language and various.
We did back when there was COVID, Zoom and everything in that room. Yeah, I think we did it.
I wasn't in my house, I suppose then.
Harav used to come sometime in that room.
Yes.
I think we talk about it.
You're right. Good point. Yes, excellent. Okay. That's the position of Rav Ovadia Yosef. That I'm really facing a catch-22 situation and I'm choosing the lesser evil. Does that make sense? Okay. Now the truth is, the others are quite similar in the way that they understand this same question. I don't think there's something to add. I'm going to miss it. The Sridei H is excellent, but it's a little bit of like a lomdus on the Taz that I'm not going to study with you now. Here, the Minchas the Minchas Shlomo. This is Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Is very, very similar to what we saw in Rav Ovachi Yosef about really the lesser of two evils. That I don't want to cause somebody to be angry in their relationship with Torah. Beseda? So I think really that is the Rav Ovachi Yosef is Sfaradi, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is Ashkenazi. So we've got all of our bases covered over here, and I think that's the best solution. The best solution is that if I'm with friends and we're eating together, I can't be embarrassed, and I need to say the brachot loud. I mean, I can't demand other people to make a bracha, but I should say, but I'm not going to mumble. I'm going to say my bracha loud and clear, and I'm going to say, I've got you in mind to make the bracha. And with that, I've not caused a bitter, taste about religious Jews. And, they said Amen, I guess, to my bracha. So they were, at least according to some, they were, they fulfilled the mitzvah of making the bracha. That would sound to me like the best option, and it's across the board. Okay, everything clear until now? Yeah. Final question. The final question is from Rav Moshe Feinstein. I'm sure it's quite a well-known question. The question is, can
I invite? Yes, sure.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is a question about the different question. The question here is, am I allowed, he does talk about that we're going to miss that out over here. We're talking about lifnei iver lo titen michshol, putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. It's connected. Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked, if there's a Jew that I know does not believe in Torah from heaven, am I allowed to call them up to the Torah? Because when I call them up to the Torah, they're going to say, Asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et Torato, that God gave us the Torah. And if they don't believe in that stuff, is that either they will or they won't? Is that lifnei iver lo titen michshol? Here, they're going to say the blessing, but what is it? Is it sort of like putting everyone in an uncomfortable situation?
Still saying the truth. It applies not to him but to Am Yisrael. Right.
Oh, nice. You're so good. He's very good, this chap. Excellent. So here, earlier, I'll tell you why I put this in. Earlier, we spoke about the Taz. The Taz said, I know for sure I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of tzedakah, but maybe this guy's going to make the blessing, maybe he won't. Sort of following that same logic, Rav Moshe Feinstein says, I am allowed to call up this person to the Torah, and the reason why I'm allowed to call them up to the Torah is because I know that 5 minutes ago, until last week when they wrote some terrible article, I know that until then, they did not have traditional Jewish views on Torah. They would not be considered part of the normative community. But this minute, they just got called up to Torah. People can do tshuva kaherefayim with the blink of an eye. People can change. So I can't take it upon myself to know that this person will not say the bracha in truth. That there's always a possibility, even if for 50 years somebody believed something, maybe that calling up to the Torah sparked something and he understood, and then he's now going to say the blessing in the correct way. And therefore, says Rav Moshe Feinstein, there's no reason not to allow this person to be called up to the Torah, even though in the past they may have been somebody that did not take Torah seriously. But this is a new opportunity. Who knows what they're going to be like in a minute from now when they walk up to the Torah, and the possibility of taking away that opportunity from them of making that bracha is not something we want to take upon ourselves. Is that clear to you? Okay. That's Rav Moshe Feinstein. I want to squeeze two more quick things in, but I just want to summarize what we said so far on the topic that we've spoken about, and then we'll move on to something slightly different. So we spoke about this problem of giving, the Rabbi Zera tells that you shouldn't give food to somebody, the shamash, unless you know if the shamash is going to make a blessing on it. That's what we saw in the Gemara. And we wondered how, and as really the way that Asher put it so well before, I'm really torn. I have my commitment to halacha. I can't be a party to the sin of a person who's going to eat food without making a blessing. On the other hand, I need to be a mensch in front of people. And how am I, sort of being a mensch can't push away halacha. So how do I grapple that? And really, what we saw both in Rav, that we saw some different answers. One's a suffix and one is a vadai. Do you remember that? We saw in the Taz. And then after we saw in Rav Ovadia Yosef, and then also in Rosh Hashanah Oyabach, that really both options are not great. And I'm choosing the lesser evil by saying the bracha in front on his behalf. One final question that I read. This was a question that was asked actually to Rav Yitzchak Herzog. Rav Yitzchak Herzog is the grandfather of the current president of the State of Israel, and he was the first chief rabbi of the State of Israel. Now, unfortunately, when the state was founded, there were many in the army who were not religious. So he says, imagine if I'm in the army, there's a Shabbat on base. Now, when you come to Shabbat on base, if I'm doing security, when I'm a guard, obviously, because of Pikuach Nefesh concerns, I am allowed to I'm allowed to drive, I'm allowed to use my walkie-talkie. So my tent mate, the guy in my tent with me, says to me very, very sweetly, he says, I am not Shomer Shabbat, and you are Shomer Shabbat. So let me take your Shabbatot. Why? I'm gonna, if you're doing Shmirah, then you will be driving and using a walkie-talkie and, breaking Shabbat. But if you weren't doing Shmirah, you'd be sitting in shul davening. But in any event, I'm going to be driving. So let me take your Shabbat slots, and you'll take my weekday ones instead. As a religious Jew, is that a problem of lifnei iver lo titen michshol? Huh?
His decision, not our decision.
What do you mean?
If he says I'll do it, okay, do it.
I gotta say,
It's not that I'm saying, hey, can you do it for me, please?
No, so the non-religious guy came to me and said,
I will do it for you. Okay, fine. That's great for me.
So,
but is that a problem? Yeah, but the question is, when I say that, I know for sure that he's going to break Shabbat. So am I putting him in a lifnei ve'lo titen michshol situation? Yes.
So, he said that he's going to be breaking Shabbat no matter what. So it's not like
Right.
he can prevent it.
Correct.
So therefore, he's going to be able to prevent.
And it's pikuach nefesh anyway.
Right. So B is pikuach nefesh. So therefore, the driving won't be an avera. It'll probably be a mitzvah. So if anything, you're probably helping the guy of doing less of an avera.
Excellent. You hear what he's saying? Because he's going to be driving. If he's going to be driving anyway, let him at least drive in a way that is permitted rather than driving in a way that's forbidden. Yes. Excellent. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
I agree with that.
Okay, I'm afraid to say, not afraid to say, I think it's very interesting that Rav Yitzhak Herzog says that you're not allowed to break Shabbat on their behalf because it might even connect to what we said about Rav Moshe Feinstein earlier, and that is I mean, part of it is I don't want to define people. Like, you don't want to define somebody as this guy's a religious person and that person's not a religious person. You know, maybe on Friday afternoon he'll have this awakening and he'll decide that he would like me to be connected. I don't want to force him. I don't want to force him to see himself as somebody who's not observant. You follow? And I am. It's true. It's true that you have to break Shabbat anyway, and it's permissible because it's pikuach nefesh. But if I don't have to, it's better not to. So I'm still putting him into a situation that it is best not to be in. You follow? And therefore, Lifnei Iver Lo Titei Michshol extends even to that situation. And I, who am Shomer Shabbat, would take upon myself to break Shabbat in that situation in order to protect him from being in a situation, a non-ideal Shabbat situation. You follow? So even though in one context, that is in the food, we've sort of really minimized Lifnei Iver Lo Titei Michshol, and we're allowing people to serve food to somebody who's not going to make a bracha because that's the lesser of the two evils. So we've really taken Lifnei Iver and made it much smaller. But in this context, when it comes to, the army context, we're making it much wider. That here's a guy, like you put so well a minute ago, Ezra, he's going to be driving his car on Shabbat, let's say. So I'm making him transgress less because he's doing a patrol, which is permitted on Shabbat, even in that situation, because I'm causing a Jew to have a non-ideal Shabbat experience. I can't put him into that situation. Also connected to what was with Rav Moshe, maybe the next minute he's about to come back.
Like you stated the situation, he puts himself into this situation by himself. Not we don't. Put
Exactly. No.
You said
no.
Non-religious guy comes and says, "I will take your Saturday." You say, "Okay, take my Saturday."
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. No, because I can't do that because I'm putting him. But I'm putting. It's true that he initiated the conversation.
No, to do
but
it's something that we decide on.
Right.
Yeah, we can decide to do a mitzvah or not do mitzvah, and we don't. For someone that doesn't do mitzvah, we don't really say to him do this and that.
Right.
If he decides to do something, okay, it's his din.
Yeah. No, but here I'm a party to his decision.
Okay.
You follow?
Yeah.
Being that I'm facilitating his chilul Shabbat by switching with him, and I think that's facilitating somebody else. It's not even chilul Shabbat because we say it's in the army. They're doing it. It's pikuach nefesh, but I'm facilitating a non-ideal Shabbat. So even though, God forbid, it's possible that his Shabbat that he's planning is even worse, but to facilitate a non-ideal halachic situation for another Jew is a problem of lifnei Iver Lo Titei Michshol. So even if it came from him, I'm facilitating it, and therefore it will be a problem. Does that make sense? But I love the basis of that idea. Who knows? Just like Rav Moshe Feinstein, the guy walking up onto the bima to get called up, maybe that minute he's having second understanding. I call, it's a Torah min hashamayim. So too this guy, Friday afternoon. Why take away the possibility from him of keeping a perfect Shabbat? Even though there's a good chance he won't do it, I can't take away that possibility from him. So, sweet, wonderful people, we've had quite an exciting journey. Yes?
Regarding, can I invite a guest for Shabbat if I know that they will drive to my home? What would be the answer?
So Rav Moshe Feinstein does discuss that as well. You're right. Rav Moshe Feinstein talks about, can I invite a guest knowing that they're going to drive? And the answer is no. I can only invite if I provide an option that would not involve Chilul Shabbat. So if I've got a friend from Tel Aviv, I can't invite my friend from Tel Aviv to spend Shabbat in Jerusalem, to come to us for Friday night. unless I say, we've got a place for you to stay.
Okay.
You follow? Now, they may not take you up on that, but that's their decision. But if I've offered them a place to stay, then I've provided a fully halachic option for them. And if they decide not to do it, that's their decision, not mine.
But
That's
still, I can
different.
invite them.
That's different to the army case because I'm part of the decision. He couldn't do Shmir on Shabbat if I didn't say I'll switch with you. You follow?
Yeah.
So if I'm facilitating somebody else's Avera, that's Lifnei Iver. But if I'm providing for a way that they would not Over, then that would be
But
fine.
For example, if you have like a list for you do Shmir on this day, he can sign up first for Shabbat.
That's because that I'm not involved at all there. Yeah, that's true.
But
Yes.
In the past, like I spent most of my Shabbat in Beit Chabad,
Excellent.
and like Beit Chabad is a place where everybody comes in there, and for sure there were a few people that I knew they were never going to spend because they have their own apartment close to, not very close. They have to drive, and for sure the rabbi pretty sure he knew that they're not going to stay for the night. But they don't come like on weekdays. They only come on Shabbat, and that too only on Erev Shabbat. Not even separate. They are like a traditional Jew.
Right.
And in that situation, what is the right way to do? I mean, like I'm pretty sure even the rabbi might have said, I'm pretty sure according to Halakha, they stay overnight. But for sure, he know that they're not gonna stay because they have their own apartment, they have their own family, and he and only his son are coming over.
That's an excellent question. I have to look it up. I think there is something. The Lubavitch Shlichim are guided by the Lubavitch Rebbe, and I think he did have a ruling on this issue. But I can't remember exactly what he said. But I'm not sure if it could well have been based on Rav Moshe Feinstein, same sort of idea, that you have to offer option, even if I know it's very unlikely. Because that then takes me off the hook. I'm not facilitating somebody breaking Shabbat.
Yeah, but it's not like once or twice. It's like for years. They've been there for many years.
But they can drive.
Embassy.
But they can drive. They can walk. If they wanted, or they couldn't walk.
They have to drive.
Okay.
It's not a walking distance.
Okay. Fine.
Because like the embassy is on the other side. It's really far.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think if you offer.
But the reason why I want to know is because I think it's also a very good way to understand even why they're able to do that, because that way when I have someone acquaintance or friend, and I know for sure that I want them to see how Shabbat felt like, and they want to come, and I want to find a way, for sure I know that they might do that. I might offer them a place to stay, but nevertheless, if they are for sure going back, then what is the halacha?
Excellent question.
There was a guy that I met in Beit Chabad. He was never religious. He was there because of the embassy job, and within a few months he became a religious guy. And the reason why he said was because how he felt coming for Kabbalat Shabbat. And I said it's always a good thing to invite people for Shabbat and see how it felt like, and it might change them.
Yeah, but you can't. You can only do that if you offer an option. You can't. You have to offer a Shomer Shabbat option, even if you know there's a good chance they won't take it.
Even if they drive to the synagogue, it's also good because they're at synagogue, and they could also drive to.
If you have a car, there's lots of other things. Exactly, quite right. But Seder, we'll end this topic with your points. But I'll just remind you how sensitive halachic authorities are. How we can really feel the tension and the real effort made by Gedolei Yisrael to find a way of including as many people as possible into the world of Shmirat Torah Mitzvot. So my prayer for all of us, Be'ezrat Hashem, that we shall be a living Kiddush Hashem, and through that to bring many people back home. Yishar Koach to all of you. Yishar Koach.